Hi, I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is the third part of our little video series here to help you ride better. I'm an international riding instructor, and I've been teaching for over 30 years to help riders do what great riders do naturally. One of the things that most of my riders have struggled with is asymmetry, and they think that they'll never be able to ride in a symmetrical way and be even on both sides. But I'm here to show you that that's only held in your brain, and there's lots of stuff you can do off the horse to improve your symmetry so that when you ride, you're much more balanced. I'm using a mirror today to show you that what you think is happening may not be true, or another way to say it is, you can trick your brain into being more symmetrical. So I've got a mirror, and as you can see, here's my two hands, right? But really, here's my other hand. And so my brain is going to start thinking, wow, I have two hands that are doing exactly the same thing, or two legs that are doing exactly the same thing. And so what that means is I can remap my brain into creating greater symmetry in my body, because the only place we perceive is right here. So often we believe, well, I'm just so right-handed, or I always have this twist. But really, with some very simple exercises that we're going to have in our upcoming Effortless Rider course, you can make huge improvements to your symmetry and your balance off the horse that you can then take to the horse. So to use the mirror, you just need this is a cheap mirror that is your typical dressing mirror. And what you do is you set it up so that you mirror the good leg. In other words, if you feel like your left ankle works better than your right ankle, or that's easier to flex, then that's what you want to mirror. You don't want to mirror the problem, because that'll put it on the other side. And you can always kind of focus in on certain parts. So I'm going to do my foot, and I can see my right foot in the mirror, and I'm just going to move my left foot while looking in the mirror. And I can move it in many different ways, and flexing and extending my ankle and moving my heel. And what my brain sees is that my two legs are doing exactly the same thing. And so now I start to create greater symmetry in my brain, which is going to result in greater symmetry in the saddle. It's a simple exercise. It doesn't take a lot of time. You just have to wait until your brain sees the other side in the mirror. And that can take a minute or two, or a couple of minutes. But it's just something you can really do to make it so much better on your horse. And if you've had an injury, this is a fabulous way to get your range of motion back. Because I have so many clients that think, wow, I've damaged my ankle and it doesn't move the same as the other one. But the limitation is so often in our brain instead of in the actual body part. And so as we remap the brain, we gain greater flexibility and movement, not just for riding, but in our everyday life. So now that you've done the mirror exercise, here's a way to apply it. And the reason I like going from the mirror to the stool is that when we drive, so many of us drive with one foot on the gas pedal, and then we sit rather crooked and collapse in our ribs and throw our weight over to one side. And since we spend so much time behind the wheel, when we get on the horse, we don't realize that we're still in this position. So by using the mirror, I've now seen that my two legs are doing the same thing at the same time. And I'm going to take that into this simple little exercise on the stool. Now you can do this when you're at work or sitting at a business meeting, anywhere you have a chair that you can easily rock forward. And what you'll notice that I did was I simply brought the chair forward onto the front legs. And as I do that, my hip is opening and my knees are going forward down over my toe. And this is my third rule. So to recap my rules, if it hurts, tell me. And that's because very often when people do something, they actually try too hard, and so they put themselves in a bit of stress. And so very often just a simple fix is just, like if I know that it's uncomfortable, we just tweak it a little. My second rule is horses get to vote, because there's such good biofeedback about what we're doing. And my third and only other rule is when you're riding, your knees need to go forward down equally and evenly, whether that's riding walk, trot, canter, lateral work on a Western horse, a jumping horse, because as my knees go forward down, my hip opens and it lets my pelvis get closer to my heels. So I'm always staying over my feet when I'm riding. And so you can see this simple little exercise on the stool is just rocking it up onto its front legs and then letting my hip open and my knee go forward down. If I brace my heel, now it's going to be like impossible for me to get the chair up. And in fact, I'm going to slide right off of it. So I want my feet underneath me, underneath my knee, and then I'm just going to rock the stool forward and let my knee go forward down. And you can see that I'm doing that equally on the two sides. So it's a simple little exercise you can practice off your horse to make your riding so much better. So the lesson on the stool that I showed you earlier was the idea that my knee had to travel forward down over my toes. If I do what most people do against the stirrup and brace my foot, I've now pushed my foot forward, and you can see that because the stirrup leather is no longer hanging vertical. If I drop my iron, you'll notice that this is where it's hanging straight down. And so when my foot is in the stirrup, that is also where it should be. It's hanging straight down. The minute I put pressure on the stirrup, I've now swung the leather forward like a pendulum. And the biggest problem with that is now my knee has straightened and it can no longer sink down. So that's going to affect my ankle, my knee, and my hip. And more importantly, it's going to affect my horse's movement. So the idea of the knee going forward down, I have to have my leg in a position where the thigh can actually lengthen down rather than the foot blocking that and pushing back. If I brace against my stirrups, you can see how that's pushed my pelvis back in the saddle, closed my hip angle, straightened my knee, and braced my ankle. And now I don't have good shock absorbers below. So when I'm sitting, and here I'm in a dressage saddle, I want it so that my thigh can travel forward down over my knee. Anybody who's done a lot of squats might find a little trouble with this, because when you do a good squat, they teach you never to let your knee go in front of your toe. But for riding, this is a really important concept, and I'll now demonstrate that in movement. So now in the walk, I'm going to place my hand on my thigh so you can see the direction that my thigh is moving. And here my hip is opening, my seat bone's coming forward because my hip is opening, and my knee is moving in a forward down direction. And this is what I'm talking about from the exercise on the stool, is that the knee needs to move forward down as if to go over the toe in order to let the hip open. And I look for this movement, whether it's walk, trot, canter, lateral work, slide, stop, or in gaited horses, because I want to make sure that I don't block the horse's hip with my hip. So this movement of forward down with the knee and thigh, and it's not something that I create. I don't push my knee down. It happens because my horse is pushing my seat forward, and I receive the movement from my horse that allows my knee to move in a forward down direction. If I brace the foot forward, now I've blocked the knee, and you can see that it's blocked my horse from moving forward. And in this case, he actually takes that as a stop because he can't lift his back and push through my seat. I've pushed against him and blocked the hindquarters instead of allowing him to move through my seat and go forward. I'm just going to place both my hands on my thighs here, and you can see how my knees are going forward down. And they go down at the same time. Many people think that they should ride alternate seat bones in the walk, but I'll demonstrate what that looks like coming towards you. And you can see that as soon as I do alternate knee forward down, it causes Al to get really stuck and not be able to move well. And the reason for that is, as I explain when I talk about anatomy, you're not sitting on the horse's pelvis, you're sitting on the horse's rib cage. And the function of the rib cage is to transmit the force generated by the hind foot against the ground, traveling through the pelvis and then through the spine to move the head forward. If I put pelvic movement on the rib cage, I'm going to interfere with that function. And so that's why I always think that the knees should go forward down equally and evenly when I'm riding my horse. So now that you've seen the importance of the knee moving forward down in movement on my horse, now you can go back to that unmounted exercise and practice it with intent. In other words, you can understand why this is such an important idea. And so practicing it off the horse is just something that keeps it in mind so that when you get in the saddle, you automatically start to seek that direction with your knees.